that you want to do. So this is the 3-6 homework, and we're going to do problem number 2. Problem number 2. Now, these problems are all basically the same, so pay attention. All right, so what's going on in problem 2? Well, I really need to, by the time you got to 2, you'd already done a lot of the work up in number 1, but I'm gonna have to just start fresh. So I'm writing an equation that looks like this. All right, so I'm looking up at my picture that I drew up there, and I can see a minimum at negative 2 pi over 3 and a maximum at 2 pi over 9. Would you agree with that? You may not have thought about that way, but would you agree with that? So I know that the distance from a minimum to a maximum is half the period. So how far is it from negative 6/9 to positive 2/9? Or that's not negative 6, yeah, it is negative 6/9 to 2/9. How far is that? Huh? 8 pi over 9. Now, 8 pi over 9 is half the period. Agreed? So what will the actual period be? 16 pi over 9. So the picture that's drawn on the paper has a period of 16/9. All right? Now, this is the number that involves period, right? So 2 pi divided by that number is going to be 16 pi over 9. Are you with me? All right, figure out what that is while I get a t-shirt here real quick.
Let's see that. I put negative 2. I have negative 2 pi over 9.
All right, have you figured it out? 18 pi equals 16 pi b, so b equals 18 pi over 16 pi, which reduces to 9/8. So b is 9/8. Now, what would the b be in problem 1? 9/8. Because whether it's a sine or a cosine, the period is the same. All right, so okay, got that one. All right, let's look. The lowest point, and I apologize, these graphs are hard to read, but the lowest point looks like it's down at negative 2. Is that right? No. Where's my line? Yeah, there it is, there it is, there it is. It's at 1. It's at 1. And the highest point then is at 2, 3, 4, 5. So my midline, okay, so I'm at 1 and 5. So my midline's at 3. So this number is a 3. Whether it's a sine or a cosine. And if the midline's at 3 and my maximum's at 5, then my amplitude must be 2. Again, whether it's a sine or a cosine doesn't matter. The amplitude's the amplitude. Now, we may end up making that negative, I don't know yet, but it's going to be 2. And it has to be, for problem 2, it has to be a cosine. So where do cosines start? They start either at a minimum or at a maximum. So if you choose to start your cosine at negative 2 pi over 3, would that be a minimum? Would that be okay? I could start it there. If I choose to start it at negative 2 pi over 3, then your C is going to be 2 pi over 3. Because what happens when you have x plus 2 pi over 3? You go backwards. If you did that, then you're going to have to make your 2 negative, because if you start at negative 2 pi over 3, isn't your curve upside down? Right? Now, what if I chose to start it at 2 pi over 9? Then this would be x minus 2 pi over 9. That moves it to the right. And this would be a positive 2. Declan?
On this problem, I have the first option with the negative 2 and the 2 pi over 3 marked both wrong.
Okay, honey, Declan, okay. What was your score on the homework?
10.
Yeah. Here's the deal. How many answers are there to each one of these problems? Infinitely many. So yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I bet that happened to a bunch of other people too. All right? I can't go through and do every single option. I would never get done with my grading. So just calm down, relax. If you know how to do the problem, that's all that matters. Okay?
How do you know that P is 2?
How far is it from the midline to the maximum? That height, that's what it is. Okay, so we talked about a couple of different possible options there. Those would be the only options that would be like normal, because those are the 2 points I have labeled on my graph. Would there be other starting places? Yeah, but I have to figure them out. So chances are you should have one of those 2 answers that we talked about.
Can a sine equation have like a negative number for the amplitude?
Okay, the amplitude is never negative. Can it have a negative leading coefficient?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then does that just mean it's starting?
That's the valley first.
Okay, and then if it's positive, it's the,
Yes.
okay.
All right, put that away. So maybe you didn't miss it anyway, Alex, but we did it. It's good practice for everyone. Okay, now let's look at the Big Ten. All right, so you remember how these work? There are 10 questions, and each one of them will have a whole number answer, 1 to 9, right?
Yep.
So let's take a moment with your partner, and let's see if you can get a few of these done anyway. These are only going to have 1 answer. Each. So we shouldn't have any ambiguity. No one.
that's,
at this. These are
for
pretty
graphic
easy.
file, that's the, so F is for equation.
All right, what did you say for A? These are pretty easy. What's the midline? 4, yep, 4. Now be careful, I know in this case you wouldn't, but when you look at B, make sure you say that the amplitude is 5. Amplitude is never negative, right? So even though there's a negative in front there, and by the way, if I were graphing problem 2, which you don't need to do, but I would rewrite it like this. That's how I would rewrite the problem. That makes more sense to me. But you don't have to do that, but it is the same equation. Now it looks like all the ones we've been doing. Okay, so did you get to C? I hope so. What did you get for C? 1, because what's A? 2, and B is -1, so that would be 2 plus -1. All right. What is the amplitude in D? This is really easy. The amplitude is 3, because the midline is 1, and maximum is 4. So that would be 3. How about E? What's the midline for that guy? Yeah, y equals 0. 0. Yeah, 0. Why? How do we know that for E? There's nothing added or subtracted from the end. All right, flip it over, take a few minutes and see what you can get through here. These are pretty fast.
Go up 3.
The maximum value that would be the midline plus the amplitude. So second.
So depending on where you start,
Remember your formula? Period is equal to 2 pi over
you have
All right, F. What is the period? F, what did you get? 9. The period is 9. 1 hill and 1 valley. Good. G, what is the maximum? 7. How do we know the maximum is 7?
4 plus 3.
Because the midline is 4 and the amplitude is 3. So we're starting at 4 and going up 3 and down 3. So the max would be 7 and the min would be 1. Right? H, what is a phase shift? Now, what is bothering some of you is you are not paying attention to the way the equation is written. Using the format that he has used in every other instance, it's something like this, right? What is different about the way this equation is written? You can't tell your horizontal shift unless that coefficient is out of there. So we have to factor out our B number. And then you can tell that you are shifted 2 units to the right. That's a positive 2 phase shift, horizontal shift. All right? I cautioned you about this yesterday. Remember when we put the problem into our calculator? Or maybe it was the day before, I don't know, someday. We put a problem into our calculator, and when it comes up, when you do sine regression on your calculator, it comes up as bx plus c. That's how it comes up. Remember I cautioned you? And I said it's fine to write an equation that way, there's no problem. But if you wanna know what the phase shift is, you have to factor that number out, okay? You have to factor that number out.
Instead of factoring it out, could you just set it up like an equation and then add the 1 over and multiply since it's
You
x over
set it
2?
equal to 0?
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. All right, I find the value of C times D. All right, so let's see, can we at least figure out what C is? What's C? 2, and we know C is 2. And then this number, which in our problem is 1 over D, 2 pi divided by that number is your period. That's what your period is. So what is the period of this picture? 6 pi? Would everybody agree with that? 6 pi?
Yeah.
So 2 pi divided by 1 over d is 6 pi. You can do this however you want. If you just want to cross multiply, that's okay. It looks like d has to be 3. Two pi divided by 1/3 would be 6 pi. Oh, and I'm multiplying now, so that would be 6. Did you get 6 for that one? 2 pi times, or 2 times 3. And finally, this is a cosine curve. Any guess what A is? Or B, either one? A is 2, because the period is pi, so the halfway point would be pi over 2, and then the halfway point of that would be pi over 4. So that one is 4 times 2, or 8. Good? Got it? All right, that was easy. All right, let's try worksheet 3.6. This is what has been disastrous for some of us in our homes. All right, so let's go ahead and get started individually, and then we'll touch base.
divided by 2.
Oh, and let's stay focused.
Lock in.
How are we on the front page? Are we done with the front page? Almost.
No, because starting at a maximum. So for cosine, if you start at the maximum, it's positive. If you start at, so if you did like a minus 6, then that would be negative. Right? And then the 1 over. What about it? Yes, let's think about it. You're at the bottom.
All right,
Minimum.
let's look at page 1 here and see what you came up with. Did you notice that when he gives an equation like he did in number 1, that there is only going to be one possible answer? Because we all have to start looking at the same place, which is at 0. So if we look at 0, would you agree that's a 0, -1 is our starting point? That's a nice little sine curve. Okay. What did you decide was the amplitude or the A value of that sine curve? 3? Yep. And what about the D value, the vertical shift or the midline? -1. And did you figure out what your B had to be by looking at the period? What did your B have to be? 2. Because the period of the picture is pi. The picture of the period of a normal sine is 2 pi. So obviously we've divided it by something. 2 pi divided by what is going to give you pi? 2, right? So you should have A is 3, B is 2, and D is -1. Does anyone have a question about that? Okay. Now what about number 2? Now I changed this one because I put in a C. Now, what does that open up? The possibility of starting wherever you wanna start, right? As long as it's a cosine curve. So if we're gonna do a cosine curve, where are we going to start? We're either gonna start at +2, or we could start at -2, or for some weird reason, if we wanted to start at 6 or 10, we could do that. But normally, we keep those numbers as small as possible, okay? So let's say I wanted to start at 2, where x is 2. Would that be a positive or a negative cosine curve if I'm starting where x is 2? Positive. When you start at the top of the mountain, that's positive. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna do a positive cosine curve and I'm starting at 2. All right, so what is my amplitude? My amplitude is 4 because my midline is 2. So already we have built most of our equation. We've said our amplitude is 4. We're starting at 2. And our midline is 2. So I am all set except for this, what we call B. Right? 2 pi, the standard period of the cosine, is going to get divided by that number. And that's going to give me my period. Well, what is my period? I should be able to tell that from my picture. What is my period?
I was just doing
8? Would everybody agree 8? So 2 pi divided by something is 8?
Yeah.
Figure out what that is, however you want to do it. It looks like it's going to be pi over 4. So my B is pi over 4. Is that all right? If you started at -2, this would be theta plus 2, and that would be a -4 if you decided to start to the left. Is that okay with everybody? Got that sorted out? All right, start looking on the next page.
Half of 5, that's the maximum, you're at 0. starting at the midline. So when you start at the midline, this is what our equals is.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait, never mind.
All right, let's look at problem number 6. So I have drawn this sort of not very well here, but kind of put it up there. So here's my maximum at pi over 2 and my minimum at 3 pi over 2. So it's clear that my midline is 25. So if I look at all my options, I can rule out, would you agree, the ones that don't have 25 at the end. I need 25 to be at the end. Would everybody agree with that? Okay. Now, the big question then is this going to be a sine or a cosine curve? Clearly, the amplitude is going to be 5. And I just need to know if it's a sine or a cosine. Now, notice, in the equation, did he put a c value in the equation? What does that mean? Got to start at 0. You got to be starting at 0, right? So I'm going to work my picture backwards. If I know my max is at pi over 2 and my min is at 3 pi over 2, won't I be crossing the midline at pi or 2 pi over 2? So if it took me from pi over 2 to pi to get down on this side, isn't it going to take me pi over 2 to get down on this side? So at 0, I'm on the y-axis. Well, of course I'm on the y-axis. I'm at 25, I'm on the midline. And if I'm on the midline, if I'm starting on the midline, then I am a sine. Okay? The fact that he put no phase shift in there means you have to know what's happening on the y-axis. So we just worked backwards, and that's what's happening on the y-axis. All right, number 7. I drew that one too. Number 7. Which of the following could be an expression for that? Now again, notice they're all cosine options. Obviously, why are they all cosine options? Because it starts at a minimum. Now, the fact that it starts at a minimum means it needs to be a negative cosine. So that means it's either B or D. So I just need to figure out what my period is. This is half the period. So what's my period? Where's this thing at? 6 pi. So 2 pi divided by something is 6 pi. So it looks like that has to be 1/3. So my equation is y equals 3, negative 3, cosine 1/3 x, plus or minus 3. All right, is that an option on there? Yeah, looks like D is our answer. You guys, are you following this? It's logical. It's just a bunch of logic. Just think about it. All right, number 8, I think is easy. It's a word problem, and it's got a ton of stuff in it. The equation looks absolutely hideous, but I think the question's easy. What is the answer? C? We know the minimum has to be 9.6 because the midline is 12, and the amplitude is 2.4. Perfect. And then were you able to write an equation for number 9? Did you get that far? What did you say, Cole?
I
should
got
write what you said.
6 sine 1/2 x minus 2. Like outside.
Like that?
Like the minus 2 is outside.
So it looks like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, what do you think? I haven't done this problem yet.
Should be 3
Oh, I got 3 sine.
So is our is our midline -2. Would we agree with that? Okay, and then from -2 to 4 is a distance of 6. Oh, I see. If you said 3, you didn't pay attention to the scale. So does 6 make sense to everybody? He's got a +6. Should that be a +6? Yes, because we're going up and then down. He's got a 1/2 x. Does that make sense? Yeah, because 2 pi divided by a half will give him his period, which is 4 pi. Beautiful. Anybody have a question about that page? All right, let's go. Let's see if we can get the next page done. We love these.
Sensitive. I think that the well, actually, no, it's not a cosine.
Remember, he's told you what kind of curve you're writing. So when you look at that first one, it has to be a sine curve. He told you that. We can easily change the directions and make it a cosine, but it's a sine.
You do start with my oh, I was gonna have to shift it. So I shifted it like 2 or 3. So then that would be, this would be. Oh wait, no, I guess I shifted that one. But it was
That's what I had for you, so maybe.
So then it'd be a negative sign if you're going down.
okay. It's the same, I just dropped it like off.
Kill him.
What?
Kill him up there.
Yeah. I missed it.
Hey, boys,
For it to be a
focus.
positive sign, you need to move it
Page down.
backwards with the F, right? You need it here.
Or you can move it to K, so you don't have coordinates there. So you put
Right.
Or you have K.
And so all of your
Right.
all of your matches.
So it wouldn't be -3, it'd be -9.
Be nice.
K's at 9.
Yeah, but you.
Well, when you see your feedback, you don't.
Try to do math right now.
Well, then that'd be +3. Because you're moving left to 3. So right there. Remember it's the opposite when you're graphing it? Where it's inside the parentheses? That'd be going left. Yeah.
Have you gotten 13? I want to touch base on that. If you miss 13, you probably miss all of them. So let's take a look at 13 real quick, the first one. Okay?
Yeah.
So we're gonna write a sine equation, which means, guys, that we're either going to start looking here or here. Would you agree with me? Now, could we extend our picture? Yes, but why? Let's use points that we know, right? So I'm gonna use this one, the first one. If I start my picture here, then I know whatever I put out in front is going to be negative. And what am I gonna put out in front? How high are these hills? 4. And since I've chosen to start where t is 3, I'm gonna put t minus 3. Which means, by the way, that if I have to write down c equals, like I did in my homework, c will equal -3, because the equation is built t plus c. So I need c to be -3 if I'm gonna shift to the right. You see, that's a point of confusion, but you need to know that this goes right. And then my midline is 3. Now the only thing left is, what is my b? Well, what is my period?
12.
How far is it from start to finish? 12? Here's 12. So 2 pi divided by something, I'll call it v, is 12. So what does your v have to be? Solve that, pi over 6. There you go. If you chose to start here, then you would have t minus 9, and that would be a positive 4. Right?
Would it be okay too? I did t plus 3 and then have the positive 4.
So you backed up
Yeah.
and used another point. That's okay. There's so many answers to
Yeah.
these. You should try to stick with the points that
Okay.
you know. But yeah, that would be okay. Also, that's a little tricky in a word problem, because usually if you think about the clock on the wall
Yeah.
and the car going around, usually t is time, and you just made time negative,
Yeah.
so it gets a little bit sticky in
Okay.
that kind too. So mathematically it would be fine.
Yeah.
Practically probably shouldn't
Okay.
do that. Okay, go ahead now. Now go ahead and finish these two. Hurry, we got 5 minutes, 4 minutes to get them done, then we gotta talk about them.
Where would the quiz be?
Huh?
That's what I thought.
Well, I thought we were gonna have one too till I graded more homework, and we need more practice, so we'll have a quiz sometime.
Are you giving us the graph?
I don't know, I might give you both. Okay,
We're
get busy, are you done?
Sport, I like the quizzes that you
Shocking,
make.
Huh?
We can make the quiz and
No, I
Yeah,
don't
that'd
have
be a
these
great
ones.
idea. What did you do during COVID?
Try. It's all coming during.
Oh, yeah, we don't.
All right,
We don't even have class.
so here we go. Enzo has finished this problem, so Enzo is gonna tell me what your A is. What's your A? Enzo, A. Problem 2.
4.
A is 4. All right, what's your B? What's your C?
3 pi.
So you had T plus 3 pi?
or sorry, negative 3 pi.
minus 3 pi. And what's your D?
60.
All right, let's take a look at Enzo's problem. Enzo chose, it looks like, to start right here. Is that a positive sine curve? Yep. Is his amplitude 4? Yep. Is his midline 16? Yep. Is that number right? I don't know, but if it is, 2 pi divided by it should be my period. Is his period 4 pi? Enzo, you got it right, good job. Now, did anybody start here? It's okay if you didn't, you can all start where he started. But if you start here, it's gonna be t minus pi, and that number is going to be negative. All right, good job, Enzo. Okay, who got 1 for this last problem?
I got it.
What was your A?
My A was 3.
What was your B?
2.
C?
Negative 5 pi over 4.
Negative
Or
5
minus
pi,
5
so
over-
minus 5 pi over 4.
And D is negative 3. Minus 4.
All right, let's check out that, see if that's right. First of all, did anybody else get that? Oh, okay, when those two get it, that's a good sign, right? That's a good sign. All right, let's check it out. Is your amplitude 3? Yep. Right? Is your midline negative 1? Yep. And it looks like Kellen chose to start right here, which is fine, and that's why that's a positive 3. Now, he put a 2 here, which means his period is 2 pi divided by 2, or pi. Is his period pi? It sure is. So that's bingo. That's a good answer. If you chose to start at 3 pi over 4, then that would be a negative 3 because you have a negative sign. All right? So one quick comment and then I'll stop talking. What if we were doing a cosine? These were all set up as sines, but what if they were cosines? The only thing that would change is where you start looking. See? And if you're a cosine, you're either going to start looking here or here. That's where we look for cosines. All right. Now, in the other class, we did, you got 3 papers from me today, and